A crackling radio fills a small kitchen in Bristol, Tennessee on the morning of January 1st, 1953. The regular programming cuts off abruptly. Hank Williams, the voice that had defined country music for a generation, has been found dead in his Cadillac at age 29. In just 6 years of recording, this troubled genius had transformed American music forever, writing 167 songs that spoke directly to the heart of post-war America, with 35 climbing to the top 10. Mount Olive, Alabama, September 17, 1923, in a modest farmhouse, Hiram King Williams enters a world of poverty and hardship. His father, Lon, a World War I veteran, spends most of Hank's childhood in and out of VA hospitals, leaving his strong-willed mother, Lily, to raise him alone. Working multiple jobs to keep food on the table, Lily runs boarding houses in Georgiana and Montgomery, unknowingly providing her son with his first audiences.
Well, Hank, that's mighty fine. I tell you, there's another thing, too, I'd like to ask you right now. How is that young fella, Randall Hank, getting along?
You mean Bo Cephas, huh?
Bo Cephas, is that what he is?
Yeah, I got to calling him that when he first born, and I thought he got to where he won't answer nothing now.
At age 6, doctors delivered devastating news. Young Hank has spina bifida occulta, a painful spinal condition that would haunt him throughout his life. During sleepless nights racked with pain, the boy finds solace in an old Silvertone radio, absorbing every note from the Grand Ole Opry broadcasts. These midnight listening sessions plant the seeds of his distinctive style, teaching him that music could transform suffering into something beautiful. The streets of Depression-era Georgiana bring an unlikely mentor into Hank's life. Rufus T-Tot Payne, a black street musician, recognizes something special in the skinny white boy who can't stop watching him play. Despite the rigid segregation of 1930 Alabama, they forge a secret apprenticeship. For 3 years, Hank pays for lessons with pennies earned from shining shoes and selling peanuts. Payne teaches him more than blues guitar technique. He shows him how to make a guitar weep.
Say, Hank, how was this overseas trip you took here a while back?
Oh, that was a fine deal, man. We went to, where did we go, honey? You went with us. We went to Berlin, we went to Vienna, we went to Wiesbaden. Strictly went to Wiesbaden, didn't we? We went all over the occupied zone over there where there had any boys at all. We went to see them.
How to bend notes until they break hearts. The Mount Olive West Baptist Church becomes young Hank's first real stage. Standing on worn wooden pews each Sunday, his voice fills the sanctuary with hymns, developing the soul-stirring delivery that would later define country music. The gospel influence shapes his entire approach, teaching him to take audiences from jubilation to heartache in a single verse. By 14, he's formed the Drifting Cowboys, playing anywhere that would have them. Hardware store openings, street corners, county fairs. 1937 brings his first taste of real recognition at Montgomery's Empire Theater. The crowd falls silent as the lanky teenager steps to the microphone. His performance wins first prize, $5, and something far more valuable, the absolute certainty that he was born to sing. But even then, the shadow of his condition looms. He develops what he calls as medicine, a dangerous mixture of alcohol and pills that temporarily dulls the constant pain. No one could have known this crude self-medication would eventually lead to his downfall. WFFA Radio in Montgomery gives Hank his first regular platform in 1939. 6 days a week, he walks through pre-dawn streets to reach the studio, his mother Lily ensuring he never misses a show, even when the pain leaves him barely able to walk. The station's reach extends across 3 states, building a grassroots following that proves crucial to his later success. Between broadcasts, he sits in quiet corners, writing lyrics on paper bags and envelopes, developing the quick, direct songwriting style that would become his trademark. It's during one of these radio shows that Audrey Shepard first sees him perform. A bold, ambitious woman with a daughter from her first marriage, she walks into the studio one day and changes his life forever. Despite her limited musical talent, she sees in Hank a rocket she could ride to stardom. They marry in 1944 at a Texaco station in Andalusia, Alabama, with a mechanic wiping grease from his hands to sign as witness.
With Hank Williams at one of the last shows he played, weren't you?
Yeah, I was his opening act for 10 days from December the 11th. We opened in Houston, Texas, and we worked all of South Texas and Dallas and Waco and Bryan or Snook, Texas. And then the last date was in Austin on December the 21st of 1952, and that was 10 days before he died. And I've tried to retrace what happened to him when I left him. And he came back down to Greenville, around Greenville and Montgomery, and he went and spent Christmas Eve with the old boy that he started out with down in Pensacola, Florida. That was down Pappy McCormick, because I talked to Pappy McCormick about his actions, and tried to retrace as many steps as I could to find out exactly what happened to him. And of course, everything is really pretty sketchy along that. Hank Williams knew that he was in trouble with the pain medication that he was taking. He got hooked on pain medication that was for his back. And he told me that because he rode with me all the time we were on this trip, we were together constantly for over 2 weeks, night and day. And he told me personally, he said, I'm going to the Caribbean right after New Year's Day. And he said, I'm going to try to get myself straightened out because I'm going back to the Opry February and you're going with me. That's what he told me. He said, you're going with me. You're not going to be part of my act, but I'm going to help you, and you're going to open my shows until you get started, things working out on your own. And he said, I'm going to go get myself straightened out because I know what my life is doing.
Audrey becomes his wife, manager, and insists on being his duet partner, despite listeners' complaints about her singing. Under Audrey's relentless pushing, the Drifting Cowboys transform from a local band into a professional touring outfit. They crisscross the Southeast in a second-hand Packard, playing any venue that would pay. Dance halls, theaters, barn dances. The car doubles as a hotel on nights they can't afford rooms. The constant travel aggravates Hank's back condition, leading to increased reliance on his medicine. Nashville beckons in 1946, where Fred Rose, a veteran music publisher, recognizes the raw genius in Hank's songwriting. Rose becomes his mentor, teaching him to refine his natural talent without losing the emotional authenticity that makes his songs special. Their first session together produces Move It On Over, Hank's first national hit, blending country themes with a driving rhythm that presages rock and roll. The success of Move It On Over earns him a spot on Louisiana Hayride, a radio show broadcast from Shreveport that rivals the Grand Ole Opry. Every Saturday night, his performances reach millions of homes across the South and Midwest. Fellow performers nickname him the Hillbilly Shakespeare for his ability to capture complex emotions in simple, powerful words. His colleagues watch in amazement as he writes masterpieces between sets, guitar in hand, working out new songs in hallways and dressing rooms. 1949 marks country music's highest honor, an invitation to join the Grand Ole Opry. His debut performance of Lovesick Blues brings the typically reserved Opry audience to its feet, demanding 6 encores. Roy Acuff, the king of country music, watches from the wings and reportedly remarks, "That boy has something none of the rest of us have." That night, he wasn't just another singer on the Opry stage. He was a revelation, showing Nashville what country music could be when raw emotion met poetic truth. In the small back room of Nashville's Castle Recording Studios, Hank creates his masterpieces. The studio itself is primitive, a converted hotel room with egg cartons nailed to walls for soundproofing. The single RCA 44BX microphone captures every creak of the wooden floors, every breath between phrases. Fred Rose insists on recording Hank in this sparse environment, knowing that technical perfection matters less than emotional truth. His songwriting process defies convention. While other artists labor for weeks over lyrics, Hank often writes his biggest hits in less than an hour. Cold, Cold Heart emerges during a morning session when Fred Rose asks if he has anything new. Hank pulls a crumpled paper from his pocket, smooths it out, and proceeds to record one of country music's most influential songs. Steel guitarist Don Helms later recalls the room falling silent as Hank performs it for the first time, everyone present knowing they're witnessing something extraordinary. Between 1947 and 1952, he writes at a furious pace. Jambalaya captures Louisiana culture in a way that crosses regional boundaries. Dear John becomes a turning point, written during a particularly turbulent period with Audrey. The song's raw honesty connects with audiences in a way country music hadn't before. It wasn't just about lost love. It was about the specific pain of reading a goodbye letter, of recognizing your own failures in someone else's handwriting. 1951 marks his creative peak. In a single 12-month period, he releases Your Cheating Heart, Hey Good Lookin', and I Can't Help It If I'm Still in Love with You. Each song showcases his gift for turning personal experience into universal truth. Tony Bennett's version of Cold Cold Heart tops the pop charts for 6 weeks, proving Hank's songs could transcend genre boundaries. Pink songs could transcend genre boundaries. Even Frank Sinatra, initially skeptical of country music, records Your Cheating Heart, calling it one of the most honest songs I've ever sung. The recording of I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry demonstrates his unique approach to studio work. After several failed attempts to capture the right mood, Hank orders everyone out except steel guitarist Don Helms. In Near Darkness, with only the single microphone, he delivers the performance that would become his signature recording. The sparse arrangement highlights every crack and quaver in his voice, creating an atmosphere of almost unbearable intimacy. Leonard Bernstein later describes it as a work of art on the level of Schubert's best songs. But the bright lights of fame cast dark shadows. By early 1952, Hank's self-destructive patterns become impossible to ignore. During a January performance at the Grand Ole Opry, he collapses mid-song during Cold, Cold Heart. His dependency on alcohol and chloral hydrate, prescribed for his chronic back pain, transforms from a coping mechanism into a lethal spiral. Between January and August 1952, he misses 26 Opry appearances, leading to his dismissal from country music's most prestigious stage. Behind these public failings lies a complex web of personal tragedy. His marriage to Audrey collapses under the weight of mutual infidelity, career pressures, and his escalating substance abuse. The divorce settlement devastates him both emotionally and financially. Audrey demands and receives half of his future royalties, $30,000 in cash, their house on Franklin Road, and custody of their son, Hank. To meet these obligations, he plays 127 shows in 1952 alone, each performance driven by a dangerous cocktail of substances. Doc Marshall, a self-styled doctor with no medical license, follows tours in a station wagon stocked with drugs. His medical bag contains morphine, B12 shots laced with amphetamines, chloral hydrate, and various sedatives. For $300 a week, Marshall provides vitamin shots before shows and sleep medication after. The drifting cowboys adapt to their leader's instability. Steel guitarist Don Helms and bassist Cedric Rainwater develop a code system, tapping their instruments when Hank starts slurring lyrics or swaying dangerously close to the edge of the stage. They carry 2 guitars to every show, one tuned normally, another tuned down half a step for nights when Hank can't match pitch. October 1952 brings his marriage to Billie Jean Jones, staged as 2 public ceremonies at the New Orleans Civic Auditorium. 8,000 people pay $3.50 each to attend the 8 p.m. ceremony, with another 6,000 for the 11 p.m. repeat performance. The money goes straight to Audrey's lawyers. His new manager, Oscar Davis, immediately books him for 42 shows in 45 days across Texas and Oklahoma, ignoring desperate warnings from band members about Hank's deteriorating condition. December 30th, 1952 dawns cold and rainy in Montgomery. Hank Williams climbs into his powder blue 1952 Cadillac, driven by college student Charles Carr, hired for $400 to chauffeur him to shows in Charleston, West Virginia and Canton, Ohio. The National Weather Service warns of severe snow across Tennessee, but Oscar Davis insists the shows must go on. There's a $3,500 guarantee at stake. His condition is already precarious. Before leaving Montgomery, he receives 2 shots from Doc Marshall, vitamin B12 laced with amphetamines for energy and morphine for his chronic back pain. He carries 6 chloral hydrate tablets in his jacket pocket, and a bottle of bonded bourbon sits on the Cadillac's back seat. The first signs of trouble appear in Birmingham. During a stop for gas, Hank becomes agitated, his speech slurring. Dr. P.H. Cardwell is called to their room at the Redmont Hotel, where he administers more morphine to calm his nerves. By the time they reach Knoxville, winter weather has made the roads treacherous. At the Andrew Johnson Hotel, porters have to carry Hank to room 311. At 6:30 a.m., when Carr and 2 porters help him back to the Cadillac, Hank is wrapped in his heavy blue overcoat, completely unresponsive but breathing. As they cross into Virginia, the weather deteriorates further. At 7:45 a.m., Carr stops at a drive-in in Bristol, attempting to rouse his passenger for coffee. When he returns to the car, he notices Hank's hand has fallen from beneath his coat. It feels ice cold to the touch. Fighting panic, Carr drives straight to Oak Hill, West Virginia, pulling into a Pure Oil station at 7:30 a.m. Station attendant Glenn Barrett checks the back seat and immediately calls for medical help. Oak Hill police officer Howard Janney arrives first, followed by Dr. Diego Nunez. At 7:54 a.m. on January 1st, 1953, in the backseat of his beloved Cadillac, Hank Williams is pronounced dead. The official cause? Acute right heart failure, brought on by a lethal combination of alcohol, chloral hydrate, and morphine. He was 29 years old. The news breaks first on WCKY Cincinnati. Within hours, radio stations across the South interrupt regular programming to play his songs continuously. WSFA Montgomery plays nothing but Hank's music for 52 straight hours. The Opry dedicates its entire January 3rd broadcast to his memory, with Red Foley and Ernest Tubb performing emotional renditions of his greatest hits. His funeral at Montgomery's Municipal Auditorium draws 2, 5, 3, 4, 5 people, the largest crowd in the city's history. Thousands more stand in freezing rain outside. Inside, his silver casket sits center stage, his Gibson guitar placed at its foot. Audrey, Billie Jean, and Lily sit in separate sections, each claiming the right to grieve as his one true love. The service lasts 4 hours, featuring performances of I Saw the Light, Peace in the Valley, and Beyond the Sunset. The funeral procession to Oakwood Cemetery stretches for 3 miles. Police estimate that 5,000 people line the streets. 25,000 floral arrangements arrive, including wreaths from Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, and the entire Grand Ole Opry cast. His tomb, designed by Lilly, features musical notes carved in marble and the inscription, I Saw the Light. In the decades following his death, Hank Williams' influence has only grown stronger. His songs have been recorded over 200 times, from Bob Dylan's raw take on I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry to Ray Charles's soulful version of Your Cheating Heart. Johnny Cash often said that every country songwriter since has lived in the shadow of Hank's genius. The numbers tell part of the story. 35 top 10 singles, 11 number 1 hits, induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame's first class in 1961. But Hank's true legacy lies in how he transformed country music from a regional genre into a national art form. Before him, country songs often relied on familiar formulas. After him, emotional authenticity became the genre's gold standard. His songwriting technique influenced artists far beyond country music. Leonard Cohen studied his lyrics while crafting Hallelujah. Bruce Springsteen cited Lost Highway as inspiration for Born to Run. Even jazz musicians like Keith Jarrett have recorded entire albums of Williams covers, finding sophisticated chord progressions hidden beneath the seemingly simple melodies. The childhood pain that shaped his music created ripples across generations. His son, Hank Williams Jr., emerged from his father's shadow to become a country music legend in his own right. His grandson, Hank Williams III, brings elements of his grandfather's sound to alternative country music. The Williams family story continues to evolve, each generation adding new chapters to the legacy. His final resting place in Montgomery has become a pilgrimage site for musicians and fans alike. Bob Dylan visited in 1963, leaving a guitar pick on the grave. Decades later, Jack White made the same journey, later saying, "Every songwriter worth their salt eventually comes to pay respects at this marble marker." Townes Van Zandt even spent his last dollars traveling to Williams' grave, believing the visit would help him write better songs. Today, 70 years after his death, Hank Williams' music continues finding new audiences. His songs appear in film soundtracks, TV shows, and commercials. Modern country stars still name-check him in their lyrics. His influence echoes through indie folk, Americana, and even hip-hop as artists sample and reimagine his work. In 2023, Your Cheating Heart and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry still receive regular radio play. The tragic irony remains. Hank Williams died believing he was a failure, his career in ruins. He couldn't have known that his 29 years of struggle would produce a body of work that would help define American music. As his mother Lily once said, God gave him a gift. The gift killed him, but the music lives on. If you found this story of talent, tragedy, and lasting influence meaningful, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the artists who shaped American music. Through the pain and triumph, through the genius and tragedy, Hank Williams' voice continues to echo across generations, reminding us that the most profound art often comes from the deepest wounds. Here in Montgomery, as the sun sets over Oakwood Cemetery, his marble monument casts a long shadow, just as his music still casts its shadow over every country song written since that cold New Year's morning in 1953. For in those brief 29 years, Hank Williams didn't just sing country music. He became country music, setting a standard of emotional truth-telling that artists still strive to match today.